Hi guys, welcome back aboard good old Athena. This week we're going to take a look at the progress I made in 2020, a quick look at the plan for the first 6 months of 2021, and at the end of the video I get to expand the NMEA 2000 network. Let's jump right in and take a look at the progress I made in 2020. With just a hint of foreshadowing, the crappiest year on record started with me picking up a new head for Athena and continuing working on the head. I also built a new platform for Athena's new holding tank. When I ripped out the galley, I decided to forgo propane and go full electric for cooking. That meant building a custom gimbaled induction cooktop and electric oven. Of course, I need somewhere to actually mount the thing so that it can gimbal, so it was on to building the new galley. With the help of Martin, I built a DIY boiler. It took a few days to put together out of some laser cut parts, but the very day I was done welding, Dometic offered me a free ProHeat X30 hydronic heater. The X30 is smaller, lighter, and much more intelligent than what I had built. If I had only gotten that offer a few days sooner, I wouldn't have built the DIY version. I went back to working on the head and built a curved front to cover up the sink, making a wooden skeleton, covering that in fleece, and wetting out the fleece with epoxy. That gave me a surface that was solid enough to lay up glass on. Then it was time for the year's second project that didn't turn out the way I thought it would, the Mini Perkins generator. I spent a week building a frame for it, only to find out that the engine was a 102, not a 402, meaning a lot less power. It also turned out that the belt-driven setup would have destroyed the engine in a pretty short amount of time. Not a success by any stretch of the imagination. Currently, the generator situation is up in the air. I'm waiting for a new flywheel housing that might not get here before we start cruising, so we'll see what happens. In preparation of painting the top sides, I glassed over the old port lights. Take a mental photo of what the hull looked like here. In just a few short months, it'll look a lot better. To help transfer the load off the main sheet, I added a stripper pole, and that'll also help stiffen up the nav station. Then it was time to build the support for the kitchen island. I built a frame out of stainless and bolted that to the stringers. Besides securing the kitchen island, this frame also secures the 200-liter diesel tank that sits in the bottom of the kitchen island. No doubt the biggest time consumer this year was painting the top sides. I started by glassing over the deck hole joint and then followed weeks and weeks of fairing while dodging rain showers. To not go insane, I broke up the fairing by doing other projects, like for instance installing Athena's fiberglass dodger with its brand new window frames. She's starting to look delightfully sci-fi-like. Ava and I decided to put the fridge inside of the kitchen island. That meant we were very restricted on space. The only option was to build a custom composite insulated box. I used 10mm core material and kingspan insulation. The inside of the box and the lid were coated with pigmented epoxy. After having varnished the new cabinet doors and drawer fronts, the galley was starting to look pretty close to done. During all of this, I was still fairing the hull, but it was finally time for that first coat of primer, a big milestone. In between coats of paint, I got the pedestal installed in the cockpit and also installed all of the new through hulls. Then it was finally time to paint the top sides with Perfection Pro. After some online COVID-friendly training and 2 coats, Athena looked pretty dang spiffy. It was incredibly rewarding to see the paint job turn out so well after having spent so much time fairing. The next big goal for 2020 was to get Athena back in the water. To do that, I needed to install her new rudder, complete with shiny new stainless and brand new bushings. Speaking of new stainless, I also replaced all of the chain plates and all of the standing rigging. We should now be good to go for many years to come. To be able to apply the third and final coat of paint, I had to build a tent over the boat. In colder climates, it can be pretty difficult to get Perfection Pro to cure enough before dew falls at night. Without building the tent, I would not have been able to finish the paint job this year. It was a lot of extra work, but in the end, it worked out, and the result was pretty dang spiffy. There were some electric isolation issues with the engine and the sail drive, but after those were solved, the engine started up without any issues after 4 years up on the hard. The last item on the to-do list before splashing Athena was the mast. I fitted a new radar, a new wind instrument, VHF antenna, and even a camera at the top of the mast. After a little over 4 years up on the hard, it was finally time to splash Athena. It was a stressful day, but in the end, it was pretty smooth sailing. No leaks, and the new standing rigging was a perfect fit. I finished 2020 by installing the ProHeat X30 hydronic heater to heat the inside of the boat and a cool blue holding plate setup to keep the drinks cold. That was a super quick, super condensed look at the progress I made here aboard Athena in 2020. I made a lot of progress. That's also the only positive thing I can really say about 2020. I'm sure for most people it's been a pretty sucky year. And for instance, I haven't seen Ava, my fiance, in over 9 months. Thankfully, it's only 6 months until she moves here aboard Athena and we can start cruising full time. That's an excellent segue into what will be the plan for the next 6 months. Now, 6 months is not a lot of time and there are a lot of tasks, but I only have 3 months left at my day job and then I have 3 months to work full time aboard Athena. I'm under no illusion that Athena is going to be completely done in 6 months. There is most definitely going to be plenty of tasks for next winter in Scotland and Ireland. The best I can do for now is just to make a prioritized list of everything I'd like to get done, and hopefully I can get most of that crossed off the list. The tasks are primarily split into 3 separate themes. The first one is in black marker, and the black marker is all about the forward cabin. It's about getting the forward cabin ready so that Ava and I have a place to live when she gets here, but also so that I can hopefully move in there in the next couple of months and put Obelix up for sale. The second theme is in red marker. That's all electrical stuff. So that means AC, DC wiring, that means high output alternator on the main engine, that means new electrical autopilot, lithium batteries, about 6 or 8 kilowatts worth, inverter charger, isolation transformer, stuff like that. The third theme is everything up on deck, and that is in blue marker. So that's stuff like applying non-skid to the deck, getting the tow rail installed, and plenty of other tasks. There are also some tasks here in green marker. Those are related to the head and the shower. There aren't that many here, but it is certainly important for us to have a working head and shower before Ava gets here. And then, last but certainly not least, there is a single task here in black and red marker that's called Clean and Sell Obelix. I'll run through each of the tasks real quick just to give you an overview of what's coming up, not to go into any kind of detail. The first task on the list here is to build a clothing locker. Here in the messy empire that is the forward cabin is an old vanity. I'm going to tear that out and build a giant clothing locker for Ava with a water tank in the bottom. Next up is to build or install a freezer in the forward cabin. Right next to the V-berth is this big open area. We're going to pop a freezer in here, have a table here, and some storage back there. The next 2 tasks should be fairly quick. There is one to install the washing machine and another one to install the dryer. Down here is the washing machine, and then above that sits the dryer. I also want to insulate the side of the hull, specifically in the V-berth area. I want to put up wooden slats just as I did aboard Obelix. I also want to paint the forward cabin and of course make a mattress for the V-berth. And then we have insulate the underside of the deck, install the headliner, put up lights just as here in the saloon, and then finally make a door for the forward cabin. It's slightly optimistic, but I hope to have those tasks completed within the next couple of months. Oh, fingers crossed. Let's move on to the next pile, the red pile. There are yet more marine electronics to be installed. I've already shown you guys the chart plotter that's going to be at the nav station. There's going to be 1 or 2 more up in the cockpit. I'm just going to run through these fairly quick. So there is to install the new autopilot. There is to install the lithium batteries. There's to set up the BMS for those lithium batteries. Then there is a task for installing the inverter charger. Then there is the installation of the isolation transformer. The MPPT the MPPT chargers, install a high output alternator on the main engine, set up an external alternator regulator, solar arch installation, fit the solar panels on the solar arch, And then there is to do a bunch of wiring and install some outlets here inside of the boat. That is already a ton of work, but we're not done yet. There is, for instance, still the blue pile left. The blue ones were all related to stuff up on deck. So the first one is to install the fabric extension on the fiberglass Dodger. Then there is install nav lights, bend on the sails. Hopefully that one will be easy and quick. There is new running rigging. The standing rigging has already been replaced. There is trim the standing rigging. There is non-skid the deck. I think I've got some kiwi grip up at the workshop. And there's install the tow rail / mini bulwarks. There's a track for the stay sail. I think we've also got a track for the head sail. And the last one, install the windlass. If I wasn't feeling stressed out before, I sure as heck am now. On top of this impossible pile is also glass the shower. That's the shower area in the head. There's a task for painting the head. And there is a task for the watertight door or hatch between the shower and the technical compartment. And then there is fit the door for the head. It would be kind of nice to have a door there. And then last, but certainly not least, clean and sell obliques. If you count it, there are 39 tasks up on the board. There's about 180 days until we want to untie the lines, which means I need to close a task every 4.5 days. I'll spare you the comments down below. That is probably not going to happen. I hope to get really, really close. But you might also have spotted that there are some tasks that are not up on the bulkhead. Like for instance, we don't really have a nice looking cabin sold. Right now there is just bare plywood there. I could certainly live with this, but I'm not too sure Ava is keen on that idea. I will do everything I can to get the boat as ready as I possibly can before Ava gets here. And certainly having 3 months to work on the boat full time is gonna help. But yeah, I don't think it's gonna be completely done. For me, this week has been all about figuring stuff out here aboard Athena, like for instance the plan for the next 6 months. I've also figured out the water tank situation. I've spent a bunch of time measuring, going over different options. I figured out what I want to do with the freezer in the forward cabin. I figured out what types of antennas I need to mount on the solar arch, and a bunch of other stuff. Seeing as going, and I wonder, doesn't really make for a super awesome video, I decided to go through all of that figuring out stuff off camera. And then when I do each of the projects, I'll go into a little bit of detail about some of the considerations I've gone through. But why don't we end this video by doing something I've really been looking forward to. And that is to put in place the panel that's gonna go here. It's gonna cover up the terminal blocks that's gonna be in here and some other stuff. The panel is also going to house the distribution panels and the chart plotter. As you can see, I've already installed 2 locks. Those are going to make sure nobody can get into this area unless they really want to. I've also been mulling over the layout of this panel. You guys gave me great feedback on last week's video. This is going to be the 24-volt distribution panel. Here's the chart plotter, and then down here is the 12-volt distribution panel. Cutting the holes for these traditional Blue Sea metal panels is kind of a pain in the behind, because you're not just cutting out a square hole. Oh no, you have to make little tabs which you can use to actually screw into, because there's no clearance here. So this is kind of annoying. This is the cutout template from Blue Sea's website, and there you can see those little tabs I mentioned, and it just makes cutting the hole just a little bit more tedious. Hoping not to mess this up, I made a little cutout template from some cardboard for the larger panel. I've already got the paper template here for the smaller panel, but the one for the larger one was, well, lost. In response to last week's video, I got a lot of comments saying that I should remember separation between the DC circuits and the AC circuits. Now, I am by no means an expert, so do not just do this. Make sure you do your own research or read the comments down below, because I'm sure somebody's gonna point out if I'm mistaken here. But I believe I will be in compliance with ABYC if I simply just add this plastic back cover here to the AC distribution panel. Let's just cross our fingers and I will start cutting holes. So far, so good. I've got the first two distribution panels mounted over here. I just need to add the 24-volt distribution panel and the chart plotter. This should fit. I did a dry fit while I was cutting the other holes, but it is a little bit tricky to get in there. Ah, there we go. Unfortunately, I seem to have misplaced 4 of the 8 screws that secures this panel, but the 4 I've got in there should be plenty good for now, so I'll just order some and put them in when I get them. Speaking of misplacing stuff, I better go ahead and mark the voltage on each of these 2 panels before I lose these little stickers. The installation instructions for the chart plotter are a little bit involved because it's not just for wood screws to secure this thing. They include this little bag. For now, I'll just use a couple of wood screws. I can always put in the rubber mounting later on. Here we are, a pretty close to finished panel. Let's go ahead and do a little dry fit of this. Let's see what this looks like. Yep. I think that looks pretty dang spiffy, but I think there's something I can do to make this look even better. How about a second one of those GMI 20 displays? That'll line up perfectly with the edge of the chart plotter. Like I mentioned in last week's video, I love these little things. They are tiny, super versatile, and incredibly easy to install. A hole saw, 4 screws, and this little piece of trim, and you're done. It's super easy. Once I install the inverter charger, I might get another panel up here, but other than that, this is basically what the nav station is gonna look like. Of course, with that 24 or 27-inch monitor here, but yeah, pretty cool. All of the AC and DC wiring aboard the boat is gonna end up here inside of this locker, and to wrangle all of that wiring, I've decided to just copy what they do aboard bigger boats. And that is to use a track like this over here. This is called a DIN track. I suppose in other parts of the world it might be a DIN track, but no matter the name for this, I've got these little terminal blocks. I don't have everything I really need to get started on the wiring yet, but hopefully I'll have it for next week. That way I can get rid of these wires dangling down here and all of this mess for the NMEA 2000, and I can shove all of that in there. Even though I can't start wiring everything, I can still get the first piece of ducting and maybe a little piece of the track put in place. I got a little tip from the local marine electrician, and that was to use these little plasticky doohickey as washers for when mounting the ducting. That way I can put a zip tie inside of it, which I can run the wiring through, and that way when I remove the lid from the ducting, all the wiring doesn't go flying out. Now we've got ducting, ducting, ducting. I'm gonna cut the track so that it's a little too long. That's because this little router that we're gonna use for cellular internet and also long-range Wi-Fi is actually mountable on a track like that. I just need to order the mount for it, and I should have that by next weekend. For illustration purposes, I've mounted the first terminal block up here. The combination of this track and these little Lego blocks, the terminal blocks, serves the exact same purpose as something like this would do. This is probably more common for smaller boats. There are already bus bars on these distribution panels, so I don't have to worry about that. And yeah, I know this might seem a little bit confusing now, but you guys will see this in action next week. So the plan for next week is to get started in the forward cabin, building the clothing locker, and also maybe, if the weather's warm enough, put up the foam strips on the side of the hull for the wooden slats in the V-berth, and then do a little bit of wiring, and also get a couple of devices added to the NMEA 2000 network. I've got a bunch of cool stuff we can add to the NMEA 2000 network, like for instance this thermometer, this engine gateway, the Garmin wind instrument at the top of the mast, the log, the chart plotter, but it doesn't really make sense to do all of that this weekend when I can't really get started on the wiring. On that little teaser, I'm gonna end this week's video here. I hope to see all of you guys back here aboard Athena next week for yet more DIY fun. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. See you!